welcome to Cleveland. This is our Teaching Artists Institute open house for Ohio.
And to learn about our Thai fellowship, because you value art for social transformation and you understand the artist's role in our community's development as more than just a picture on the wall or a song on the stage, but you see the artist as an influential leader in our community. There's an art in all of us, but the teaching artist is one that dedicates themselves to using that influence that is naturally inside of all of us to define reality, to create a culture around what they do. And hopefully that's a positive culture that will force you to explore your own value system, to consider what it is that you want to do with the rest of your life. We're developing projects with artists that they'll see as fundamental to who they are.
70-year-old African male in white America, and your average honor student. Had a nice little GPA going all the way up till middle school, hanging around all the nerds and whatnot. And then it was somewhere between 7th and 8th grade that I was like that's when your body starts going through changes. Puberty hits real bad. You start to, the realities just all start to come in. It's like, just some things just weren't connected for me. Like, I know my mom has always been like an activist of the black community, and meanwhile I'm at school learning about how we came from monkeys, and she's like, no, your ancestors had crowns on their heads. And I'm like, so what's the inconsistencies? Like, why is this not cohesive? Like, it's basically me putting my Bible against a science textbook that basically defines how the rest of my future is going to go. You know what I mean?
All right,
so,
all right.
Those 2 years, like 8th grade and 9th grade, I started struggling through school. Like, grades not at all what they used to be. I was just spent all that time, like, I knew what didn't feel right to me. So I spent that time emptying my mind of that stuff, and I was kind of void. Then sophomore year, I joined the College Credit Plus program, which allows you to get college credit while you're getting high school credit. And that's when I had the freedom, like the liberty in my schedule to go research things that I found was important for me in my development versus what they're telling me is good for me in my development. Yeah, that's me. I play the saxophone, very passionate about that. Have had lots of doors open for me with this institution. I play with a professional musician by the name of Danico Evans in Los Angeles this year, and I've played with a jazz band in Cuba. So that was an amazing experience for sure that I wouldn't otherwise have had if I wasn't a part of this institution. So, okay. So the Kori Project is named from the Kori bird, which is the largest African bird in the world. So the story of the bird is that because it's the largest bird with the longest and heaviest wingspan, and it basically sits on its own, it never really thinks to fly. And it sees that the world isn't how it should be. It's not how it's been portrayed up until its final development. So it sees that it's time to make a change in the world, and it starts to take flight. And just from it spreading its wings and starting to levitate off the ground, naturally other birds from other flocks start to attract to it like a magnet, and they become their own force and influence over the world so they can make the change that they want to see. And then the flock matures and they divide up and they split across the world to make the social change that's definitely necessary. So the goal of my project is aimed for the youth and basically students who want to use their artistic expression for social change. And the goal is to allow them to see that the bird is inside of them, and all they really have to do is like realize that and come into their true potential, because so much of it is unaccessed. Like for me, what I see on average is a single parent home, mom or dad may not really care about them. They got siblings at home, you know. It's not all fine and dandy. Like a financially stable home with two married parents and a layout of your whole history is very, extremely rare. So it's like I see like elders all the time when some kids hanging out doing what they're not supposed to be doing. Well, they're just the bad kids. They have no idea what they want to do with their lives. Like, I feel sympathy for them because I was almost one of them. You know what I mean? It's all up to circumstance, really. And I feel like that lack of information is the reason that we are where we are today. And this project is going to fuel that change that's absolutely necessary. But there's a series of methods that come with this project. And this is Corey 101. First step is to understand your cultural identity. Like, I find that because the home isn't completely intact and that a lot of our history has been lost, that you have no idea where you're coming from. Like, I know a majority of my friends, like, they don't know that Africans weren't just slaves all the time. That's all we talk about during Black History Month. I've been fortunate enough to have a mother to tell me that we've come from kings and queens, so I understand, and with that knowledge, like, there's no reason for me not to be able to succeed if I'm coming out of royalty, you know what I mean? I think that understanding gets lost in translation when there's not a community base that's constantly enforcing that. Instead, it's a bunch of white people sitting in front of a classroom full of students telling them to sit down and understand that we were monkeys 800 years ago, and you're just now coming into your humanity, you know what I mean? So that would be the first one. Passion for artistic expression. Art is everything. Like, I took from my mom, like, art gets you in places that business cannot. And when you talk about art, there's really not one thing that you can talk about that isn't. From food, music, I mean, it's all a part of your daily life, you know. I mean, it's not a day that you can go without art. I don't really feel like I'm doing that justice, but I feel like y'all get the point.
Absolutely.
This is a room full of artists. So, this is supposed to lead into academic excellence. And for me, understanding what I come from and having a passion for music, I play the saxophone, and having that fusion has always made me want to do my best and apply myself in every single field in school, even if I don't agree with what I'm learning. You know what I mean? And that all ties into how I've been able to get to this point. Instead of sitting in the classroom and fussing about it, like, I'm now in a position to graduate from high school with an associate's degree. And I feel like that should be the norm amongst my peers. A lot of Africans are geniuses, and we don't know that. Like, we always think that the Chinese are the smartest people in the world. But no, C is for China, A is for Africa. So, basically, there's going to be this workbook that we work out of. This is going to be like a new set of standards. Instead of how well you can add 1 + 1 or why the sky is blue to determine how effective of a human being you are, is how well you understand yourself and how you connect that to how you feel that you can use that sense of identity and the passion for what you want out of life and make the world a better place instead. So in the A+ method, it consists of 4 A's: awaken, your legacy of genius, assess the stereotypes of underachievement, attach to community building, and apply, installing an effective work ethic. So in this, I think I've already discussed the legacy. Understanding where you come from. Stereotypes of underachievement. All you see on the news is about how, oh, this white girl is the valedictorian and she's always going to reign supreme over all of her peers in this community, and that, you know, blacks are naturally lazy and this and that. But that's almost 100% untrue, and I feel like the only reason that stereotype is alive is because they've made it to be that way. like this current system, as far as education goes, is not set up for us to succeed at maximum capacity, because that would upstage them. So, in this project, we come together and we talk about what really matters, understanding who you are and where you come from, understanding why art is the foundation of everything that we represent, you know what I mean? Miss Kim Poole always talks about how the drum is the one language that everyone understands, you know what I mean? I don't really speak Spanish, but you can definitely communicate to a person that doesn't speak the same language as you if you know the same song, you know what I mean? Music in itself is a language. So in that way, like, we're all connected. There's not one person that doesn't understand it. So we come together, discuss what's important, the community building, and we like boost each other. Like, these people aren't going to tell us that we should be achieving at the highest rates and that we should go after what we strongly believe in. We should just do our best to write the correct answers on a piece of paper and, you know, become effective citizens of society. But I believe that we could do much more. And then installing effective work ethics. After we go out, well, this goes into Nomad, which is a traveling village. And in this group, we understand that traveling is definitely a necessity and not a luxury. Traveling gives you a whole new perspective on how life is. Your world is only so big if you stay in your community your whole life. But traveling gives you just this new diverse feel, and like you're basically walking into like a whole new story in your life whenever you leave the comfort of your home. And then you would bring those experiences back to your community, and you would help be the bird that I talked about earlier. You would become that influence for someone else. And yeah, that's the A+ method. As far as sponsorship and endorsement goes, is I've had a meeting with my principal, laid out everything that I feel so strongly and passionate about, and asked for a letter of support. Just simply asking him to support me. I understand that that some schools receive Title I funding, free and reduced lunch, and with that comes a certain access to money that is that students can qualify for.
Hold them accountable.
Yeah, hold them accountable, I guess. Yeah. So with that, it's like basically the concept is you do what you're supposed to do, you get your good grades, they pay for you to travel.
That's why A is for Africa, because you can get A's. There are 4 different learning styles, and just because your preferred learning style is not the one in the classrooms doesn't mean that you can't adapt. You have always adapted. You've always created. Know your history, and you'll know your potential. So that's why we have to start there with letting you know where you come from. I know that the next A, I believe, is to assess. So you knowing where you come from and being able to connect or see those skills in you is 2 different lessons. So doing skills incubators, them understanding, how am I good? What can I do? You know, I'm smart, I think. You know, what am I good at? So taking you through a process where you understand that, oh my God, I never knew I could play the saxophone like this. Well, I never tried. Nobody ever put a saxophone in my hand. Or, you know, I never knew I was a writer. But sending you into a space that is safe enough to explore that with you, to feel vulnerable. This is what we do with our Teaching Artist Fellows. It's like you have a passion. We're going to merge that passion with another sector of development. This is a new space for you. So can you be vulnerable with us? The Corey Project does that as well. Working with young people, we're going to assess your skill set. And that's a vulnerable space where you're taught, oh my God, don't show them that I'm inadequate, that I'm on a journey of self, like we all are, that I'm not sure who I am, and I'm a teenager. Like, what are you saying? This is something that we've all gone through, and that we're all still going through, and you'll continually go through. Let us have that open conversation with you, as opposed to putting up this facade or this wall that makes you feel like if you don't act like this or walk like that or appear to be this, that you're weak. we have that super macho mentality in our community. Women have to be super strong. You bear culture. You do all these things, and you're the woman of the house. Men, they're crying in the dark because it's not manly to show how you feel. That's why artistic expression is so important, especially for men, black men in particular. And then attach. That's where the attachment comes from. When you create that safe space because you're around people that you know you can trust with your vulnerability. You need to be in a place where you can let down your hair with people in your age group. Because, I mean, me telling you that you fly only means so much. It's like, Miss Kim, you are old. You don't know what fly is. But, being in school, in high school with somebody in your age group and a Vondre coming out and saying, yes, you fly, queen, with your natural hair. Like, she like, oh, for real? Like, a Vondre think I'm cute? Like, that means something. So my thing is that, having people from his own demographic, youth popular culture, him defining what youth popular culture is, it means something different from the elder class saying, oh, this is what the standard is. No, the young people are saying, hey, attach to me. This is what the standard is. And then apply. Coming back and demonstrating your competency. These tests in these schools that teach us to, go through this standardization process, we were never that way. That's not the African way. We were always a group of people, a worldview that demonstrated what we knew through building institutions that last. And so you want to tell me what you know, show me through application. And so applying what you know, you come back from the Corey project or whatever project you're working with that decides to use the Corey A+ model and demonstrate what you know in your local community by applying that knowledge over and over and over again. So I think, yes, to answer your question, the A+ method within the Corey project can be used in any organization. As a matter of fact, eventually, as the Vondre grows, they should advocate that any organization that attempts to teach us, right, will use this method.
We're setting the standard.
And this Peace Corps volunteer introduced me to his most famous book called The African Origin of Civilization. And I read that book, I was reading that book, and one night coming back from Chad, I was in my villa there in Bamako with the wall, Muslim wall around me, the Niger River floating outside there. And I wondered what I was going to do with my life. And it hit me that here I was in the midst of this civilization with all this history and all this art around me. I decided that I would meet the spirit of the ancestors, and I would dedicate my life towards, first I was going to harness the moment, and I was going to collect African art. And that was before we had a Smithsonian African Museum in Washington. I harnessed the moment, I started collecting African art to bring back to America and to find some way to nurture the consciousness of my people, to bring them back into being familiar with their great African past. So I harnessed the moment and I started collecting African art. Had no idea what I was going to do with it once I got back to America. I had a house in Washington, D.C. All my art came back to Washington, D.C., and I was wondering what I was going to do with this art. Make a long story short again, that was 40 years ago that I met the spirit of my ancestors, and I decided that I was going to spend the rest of my life going to see how far I was going to go, how far the spirit of the ancestors and God Almighty, how the two of them was going to guide my spirit, and in order to do what I want to do. To make a long story short again, the spirit of the ancestors and God Almighty has taken my spirit with the African art and whatnot, and has led me to the heart of the black community, which is the Black Church Sanctuary. I created a non-profit organization called Jah International. Jah, J-A-H, stands for Jah Rastafari, and Kente is the name of the official cloth of Ghana, Kente cloth. And I guess you all know about Kente cloth here. This is Kente cloth here. So I created an organization called Jah Kente. And what I do is that I offer about 4 or 5 services to the community. One service that I offer is that I take authentic, colorful, hand-woven African textiles and I dress venues like the church sanctuaries. The Kennedy Center in Washington, for 11 consecutive years, I dressed the spirit of Kwanzaa at the Kennedy Center for 11 consecutive years. Even on yesterday, I dressed out the sanctuary for the Messiah that will be this coming Sunday, and for the holiday season. Now I'm a teaching artist fellow. I'm an elder. Kim, my sister here, I met Kim in 2011. We both met excavating the tomb of Karakamon in Egypt. In case you have not heard of Tony Browder is the only African American who has been given permission by the Department of Antiquities in Egypt to excavate the tomb to excavate in the Valley of the Kings. In 2011, Kim and we were both part of Tony Browder's excavation team. This year, Tony Browder excavated for the 8th year the tomb of Karakomun. When I met Kim, she was a senior in her last year at the University of Maryland, and I was very impressed with Kim's energy and her professionalism. Since that time, Kim and we have been working very closely together, and Kim had come forth with a creation called the Teaching Artists Institute, and I'm a fellow. Now I want you all to know that as artists, I can advise you to take your artistic creativity and use it as a mission to promote and nurture the consciousness of our people. Our people are in need of their conscious being elevated to truth. Throughout the history of humankind, there was always a need in order to bring people together who had been conquered. And as you all know, it is said, Sheikh Adajob said that for us as African people, we have to look at Egypt and the Nile Valley civilization like the white man look at Greece and Rome. Now you say, why did he say that we as Africans must look at Egypt and the Nile Valley civilization? As you know, in the white man's world, everything has to be written before it can be understood. And he judged your history according to what you can write down. The oldest language that we have that have been deciphered so far has been the Melanesia, which is the hieroglyphics. And as you know, that in 1823, Jean-Francois Champollion, the Frenchman, he deciphered the Melanesia, which is the hieroglyphics. Now we can read exactly the spirituality of our people. We can read all about what happened. Even we can compare the chronology of the Bible now with the chronology of the Melanesia now. As teaching artists, as we work with our people, take your creativity, take yourself first, start with yourself first, and then start with your family and then your community. But you must find some creative way to research our history. Now, as I told you at the very beginning, that I am a cultural evangelist. Now, as a cultural evangelist, I don't use the Bible. I use something called, how many of you have heard of the Sankofa? Sankofa. What I do is that I give out the Sankofa bird. And Sankofa, in case you haven't heard of Haile Gerima, there's a movie called Sankofa. Haile Gerima is an international renowned Ethiopian filmmaker. He's been teaching in the School of Communication at Howard for the past almost 30 years now. And right across the street from Howard University on George Avenue is his shop called the Sankofa Cafe. Now, before I became familiar with Haile Gerima's movie Sankofa, I knew Sankofa, the word Sankofa was one of the Adinkra symbols, and I only thought it was only one symbol for Sankofa, and that was the Valentine heart that we all are familiar with, the Valentine heart. The Europeans stole that Adinkra symbol and made it our Western Valentine heart. But when I got familiar with Haile Gerima's Sankofa, Haile Gerima used a second icon for Sankofa. And that icon is the bird with the head turned around touching the back. Now, us in the Afrocentric spirit, as we talk to our brothers and sisters, among these 90-odd Adinkra symbols, we try to get our people familiar with two of them. The very first one you see on the chart is this ring here. It's called Jinyame. God is first. It looks very Asian, like Japanese, but it means God is first, Jinyame. And that's the very first one. The second one that we try to emphasize is called the Sankofa. Now I told you about the Valentine heart. Whenever you see the Valentine heart, you know that's one of the Adinkra symbols, which means Sankofa. And then the second one is the bird here. It means reach back to the past and fetch that which is needed, that which you know you have forgotten, that which you never knew, but you know you should have. Learn about it, correct it, and move on into the future. So I want to give you the year that I met Kim. We were living, our hostel was right across the street, the road from the Colossi of Memnon. Now, if you don't know anything about Memnon, I would tell you to write that word down, Memnon. He was the greatest of all the Greek historical Ethiopian warriors. And the Western world did not tell you about Memnon. Memnon, Memnon. I didn't know that much about Egypt when I went to Egypt when I went to Egypt and met Kim. but our hostel was right across the road from these 60 feet granite stone statues, colossals of Memnon. One night I went to the roof, and no one was there. I think Kim, they were all downstairs, but I looked across the road at these huge statues, and way in the background was the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. And during the day, we worked in an area called Asasif, which is between the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. And that night, it dawned on me that Egypt was the voice of Africa before Jesus' time. Therefore, every country in Africa that I went to, I always collect authentic African textiles to dress the venues. So that night, I concluded that yes, Egypt was the voice of Africa before Jesus' time. And so the next day, I went to Luxor and I bought textile, and this is what I bought here. This is the lotus flower here. Listen very carefully. This is the lotus flower here that represents Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt means from Cairo all the way up to the Sudan, the Nile Valley civilization, all of Africa. I had no idea that it represented Upper Egypt. Egypt consists of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt, the icon is the papyrus, and Upper Egypt is the lotus. So I said, wow, I'll buy some textiles from Egypt. And that was the first voice of Africa. And I thought to myself, now, what is the voice of Africa during Jesus' time? And I know in the Bible, Ethiopia, all the Greeks called anything black, that was the land of the blacks, was Ethiopia. And I had been to Ethiopia, so I had the fabric from Ethiopia. That was the second voice. Because many years I was dressing these venues and just put fabric up. They had no meaning to them at all. But it's the only time when I met Kim and these voices came to me. And the second voice during Jesus' time was Ethiopia. And I said, well, what was the voice of Africa after Ethiopia? And I said, let's see now what happened. And I thought. And 2,000 years went by. Africa was conquered, divided up, and colonized. And the very first country to come out of all of that independence was Ghana in 1957. And that was the kente cloth here. That was the third voice, the kente cloth here. And I said, well, after 1957, what became the voice of all of Africa then? And then I realized that in 1963, Modibo Keita in Mali, Sekou Touré in Guinea, and Nkrumah in Ghana came together in Ethiopia with Haile Selassie, and they created the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. And the OAU was that organization that they created so that when all the other countries became independent, they would join and it would be one voice for Africa. And that's the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, and this is the white cloth from Guinea. Then I said, well, in 1963 then, did anything else come forth? Was there any other official voice coming out of Africa? And I realized that in 2002, the OAU in South Africa, when Gaddafi was in charge of the OAU, changed their name, the name OAU, to the AU, the African Union. And I said, wow, the African Union. And to represent the African Union, I thought about Kwanzaa. And we are getting ready to go into Kwanzaa. And those colors are the red for the blood, the black for the people, and green for the land. So that wasn't 1, 2, 3, the first voice, the second voice, the third voice, the fourth voice, and the fifth voice. And from 2011 to last November, every time I decorated a venue, those 5 voices were the focus. Then last November, I gave a talk at the 3rd International Conference on Ethiopia, its culture, biblical and historical roots. We were in Addis Ababa, we went on to Lalibela, and then to Exxon. And up in Exxon, at the Queen of Sheba's ruins, as I looked and saw the frontier of Eritrea, and where the battles were fought with Mussolini, it came upon me that in 2012, the African Union recognized all Africans in the diaspora. that was just historical. For the first time in 2012, the OAU, the African Union, the AU recognized all Africans living outside of Africa, just like the Jews, Israel, and all the Jews living outside of Israel. And as a result, I said, wow, now, I said, what will represent that major turn? And I thought about gold that was stolen. And so that's the gold piece right here. That's the sixth voice. And I said, now, that's the sixth voice now. There must be a seventh voice somewhere. Then it dawned on me that Sankofa, reach back, fetch it, reclaim it, reactivate it, and come together. And since we started out with Egypt here, finally Africa came together in unity with the OAU and the AU. Then Africa recognized her children living outside of Africa. And now we're back now to where we started out, back with the Lotus now, back to Egypt now, and the Nile Valley civilization. So now wherever I dress a video now, I have the seventh voice is now focused now. And if you look at the pictures I showed you of Dr. Francis Cress Welson's memorial and whatnot, you'll see that focus on the seven voices of Africa. Thank you very much. That's all.
I work in the public housing. Never know the projects. And our projects need healing. And it's these relationships and broken relationships. And it's destructive because the African people are communal people. They're relational. And when we're broken from our relationships, and I do believe that God had it so that I could find these family members. And it was not for the healing of our family, but it was for the healing of our people. Because what I saw, just like the Ashanti nation, that if we were to connect with others, there's someone who thinks like you, who's walking right around. They might be in Los Angeles, they might be Cleveland, but they have the same spirit that you do. I was very fortunate this Thanksgiving that I appeared on the front page of our local newspaper. I walked into the newspaper because I was planning a trip for the seniors and those in the public housing. We were going to take them on a trip. And with the people that I work with, and there's lots of whites that I work with, they said, oh, the spirit that you have. They said, oh, it's just so peaceful. And they send all these people who are difficult, and then they'll tell me that they want them to work with me. They're assigning this person. And what it means is none of them can work with them. Yeah. But it's the spirit of Africa in me. That's why they send them. And then they say, oh, people that were considered discards. I had one person who came, and she was white, African American, Puerto Rican, and so she was assigned to me. Oh, and then they were going to get rid of her. And I went and I sat in a meeting, and in this meeting, they thought I was from the projects in this meeting, and they told me, get out. That's what the guy said to me. He told me, get out. And I proceeded to sit down anyway. And he found out that that wasn't going to work. And I was just listening to what was going on as he was talking with this young lady. And they were talking, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And why didn't you do, because he was trying to move her out the door. And then I said, well, I have something to say. He said, you don't have anything to say. Be quiet. Because, and then it went on a little further. And I said, now, hold on. I said, what she's saying is true. And he looked at me. He says, well, who are you? That's what he said. Who are you? And I said, well, I'm the director of the library here, and I'm over all of the residents here. And I said, and what she's saying, I said, it happened just like that. I said, because I was there when these things occurred. Then they had to step back. And to make a long story short, she ended up reporting to me. Oh yes, she ended. And that's why this art is so important. Because we want you to become free. We want you to find your purpose.
Yes.
Because when you find your purpose,
Yes.
then you could be in these places and set others free.
Yes.
And this young person who, he said, oh, well, she has an advocate. I said, yes, she does. She has an advocate because I'm not going to let you railroad her. And then she came, and the library that I had, it was just chaos there, just like a whole bunch of books on it, because, it was just for us in the projects. Oh, but when she came, she said, we must have something beautiful for our children. She took that library, she decorated it. She then has the piñata in there, the sombrero. She has the African textiles. And then she went and she brought in the book. And it had all of these prints from the African diaspora. And they run on the shelf all the way around the room. I didn't know that she was working on all of this, but it was my birthday. My birthday. And they said, well, they wanted me to go somewhere. But then when I came back, they said, surprise! They had this cake. They had the place decorated. But what I want to say today, that's how many have been treated. As discards.
Yes.
But through the art, it starts the healing process. Through the genealogy and connecting with one another. And you're going to have to get over that people don't like you. But this book provides tools so that you can find your purpose and make those global connections.
Appreciate that. We wanted to, pull you all together so that we could have an exchange with one another, but also to introduce you to the Teaching Artists Institute and the fellowship program, and engage you if you're interested in taking this journey with us.